There's a moment most people don't talk about. It happens somewhere between waking up and getting out the door, when you reach for your shoes, pull them on, and they fit perfectly, comfortable, natural, like they were made for your feet. And then you come home at the end of the day, sit down to take those same shoes off, and you have to work at it. Just a little, just enough to notice. The laces feel tighter. The leather presses differently across the top of your foot. You peel the shoe off, and there it is. That faint ridge pressed into your skin from your sock. A gentle crease that takes a minute to fade. You rub your ankle without even thinking about it. And then you move on because that's just what happens. That's just getting older. That's just being on your feet. Except it isn't. And what surprises most people is this. The swelling itself often isn't the real problem. It's the sign that circulation in the legs has already started slowing down. I've sat across from patients for over 2 decades who describe this exact moment. The shoe that fits at 9 and fights back at 6. And almost every one of them apologized for mentioning it. Like it wasn't worth bringing up. Like it was too small a thing to matter. But here's what I've learned. The body doesn't do small things for no reason. Every signal has a source. And when that source goes unaddressed long enough, the signal gets louder. One patient once told me she stopped going to evening dinners because she couldn't comfortably get her shoes back on afterward. Another quietly stopped taking walks with her husband because her legs felt heavy by sunset. Neither thought it was medical. Both thought it was simply age. It wasn't. What's happening in your legs by the end of the day isn't a mystery, it's mechanics. Your circulatory system, specifically the venous side of it, the network of vessels responsible for carrying blood back up from your legs toward your heart, depends on something most people have never been told about. It depends on movement, not running, not workouts, just movement. Because buried inside your calf, sitting quietly between muscle and bone, is one of the most elegant pumping systems your body has ever developed. When you walk, when your heel lifts and your calf contracts, that muscle squeezes the veins running through it, propelling blood upward against gravity back toward your heart. Physiologists call this venous return. I call it your second heart, because that's essentially what it is. A pump you've had your whole life that nobody ever told you needed to be used. And when you sit at a desk, in a car, in a waiting room on a sofa, that pump goes quiet. Blood and fluid that should be moving upward begin to pool. The pressure builds slowly, almost imperceptibly, in the small vessels of your lower legs and ankles. Fluid is pushed out into surrounding tissue. And by the time you reach for your shoes that evening, that tissue holds more fluid than it did at sunrise. That's not age. That's fluid physics. That's what happens when a pump designed to run sits idle for hours at a time. And here's what concerns me most when I see this pattern. Most people adapt to it instead of addressing it. They buy wider shoes for the afternoon. They stop wearing certain clothes. They choose chairs with higher armrests because standing up has quietly become something that requires planning. The adaptation is so gradual it becomes invisible, until one day they realize they haven't walked comfortably in years. That's the progression I want to interrupt, early while the solution is still simple. And the good news is that restoring circulation often begins with movements so small people underestimate them completely. Think of these as 5 circulation resets, 5 ways to wake the pump back up. The first is heel raises. Stand behind a sturdy chair, both hands resting lightly on the back for balance. Rise slowly onto the balls of your feet, not quickly, not with momentum, but deliberately, so you can feel your calf muscles tighten through the full motion. Hold that raised position for 2 seconds, then lower back down with control. 10 to 15 repetitions twice a day. What you're doing here is manually activating that calf muscle pump, squeezing the veins in your lower leg exactly the way walking does. You'll feel mild fatigue in the calf, maybe slight warmth, That's exactly right. That's fluid moving. If balance is a concern, this can be done seated. Simply lift your heels while keeping the balls of your feet pressed into the floor. And here's something important most people don't realize. Standing still for long periods doesn't help circulation nearly as much as walking does, because standing locks the muscles. Walking activates them. The pump only works when the muscle contracts and relaxes rhythmically. Next are ankle circles. Sit comfortably with one foot lifted a few inches off the floor. Slowly rotate your foot in a full circle, 8 times in one direction, then 8 times in the other. Slow, deliberate, full range, then switch feet. What this accomplishes is something heel raises alone can't. It moves the ankle joint through its complete range of motion, stimulating the lymphatic vessels and smaller capillaries around the joint itself. Fluid that pools in the ankle tends to settle in these narrower channels, and circular motion is one of the most effective ways to encourage it to drain. If you've ever noticed your ankles feeling tight after a long drive or flight, this is exactly why. And that matters more than people think, because prolonged sitting has quietly become one of the defining physical stresses of modern life. The third movement is seated marching. Sit upright with both feet flat on the floor and your spine long. Lift one knee, then the other, slowly marching in place for 30 seconds to a minute. This movement is deceptively powerful because you're not just moving your legs, you're rhythmically decompressing the larger veins of the thigh. The femoral vein runs through the inner thigh and is one of the primary channels carrying blood back from the lower body. When you sit for long periods, the pressure of the chair against the thighs can partially compress that system. Marching relieves that compression in pulses, exactly like walking. This is why your legs feel better after even a short walk around the block than after 2 hours of sitting still. One feeds the pump, the other starves it. The fourth movement is the one many of my patients say changes the heaviness almost immediately. Wall leg elevation. Lie on your back close to a wall and walk your feet upward until your legs are resting vertically against it. Stay there for 3 to 5 minutes, breathing normally. Gravity now works for you instead of against you. Fluid that has accumulated throughout the day begins draining back toward the core passively. This is one of the few times in medicine where doing nothing is the treatment. If getting to the floor feels unsafe, elevate your legs on cushions or an ottoman while lying on a sofa. The key is simply that your feet are above the level of your heart. Do this once a day, ideally in the afternoon or early evening, before the swelling has fully settled in. And if your swelling tends to worsen during summer heat, this movement becomes even more important. Heat naturally causes blood vessels to dilate, making fluid leakage into surrounding tissues more likely. The fifth and final movement is toe flex and point. Pull your toes back toward your shin and hold for 3 seconds. Then point them away and hold again. Repeat 8 to 10 times. This activates the smaller muscles and vessels within the foot itself, including the plantar fascia, the dense tissue along the sole. Fluid retention in the foot is common and often overlooked because feet are enclosed in shoes for most of the day, and mild swelling goes unnoticed until it becomes significant. This movement creates a gentle milking effect through the tissues of the foot, encouraging lymphatic drainage from the very base of the extremity upward. Feet are the bottom of the hydraulic system. They matter more than most people think. Now, I do want to pause for one important clarification. Not all swelling should be dismissed as just circulation. If swelling appears suddenly, affects only one leg, comes with redness, pain, warmth, chest discomfort, or shortness of breath, or if it no longer improves overnight, that deserves medical attention promptly. Because while mild fluid retention is common, certain patterns can signal something much more serious. That distinction matters. But for many people, what starts as evening tightness in the shoes is simply the body asking for movement it stopped receiving consistently. What happens when these signals go ignored for years is rarely dramatic at first. In the beginning, the swelling is intermittent. Worse in summer, worse after travel, better in the morning. Easy to explain away. But over time, the morning relief becomes less complete. The heaviness lasts longer. The skin around the ankles may slowly begin to change texture or color. A slight thickening, a subtle darkening that wasn't there before. These are signs that chronic venous congestion is beginning to affect the tissue itself, not just the fluid within it. And eventually mobility itself begins to narrow. Not all at once, quietly. The decision to walk to the corner store becomes a calculation instead of a reflex. And that loss of casual movement, the ability to stand, walk, and move through the world without negotiating with your body first, is one of the things I care most about protecting. Because once that freedom disappears, reclaiming it becomes far harder than maintaining it ever would have been. This isn't about fitness. It's not about athleticism. It's not about pushing yourself. It's about preserving freedom, the freedom to get up easily, to travel comfortably, to visit people you love, to walk through a grocery store without your legs feeling heavy, to move through your life without your body resisting every step by evening. The calf pump doesn't ask much. It just needs to be used. And every time you do these movements, every morning, every afternoon, every time you stand up and take a slow walk around the room instead of remaining seated another hour, you are answering the signals your body has been sending for years. You are restoring something your body already knows how to do. You are keeping your own blood moving, and that is not a small thing. That may be one of the most important investments you make in the decades ahead. And if this resonated with you, if you recognize yourself somewhere in this video, let me know in the comments with the number 1. I read every one of them. And if someone in your life keeps brushing off swollen ankles or heavy legs as just getting older, share this with them. Sometimes the smallest daily changes protect the biggest pieces of our future. Subscribe if you want more of this. I'll keep bringing you what I see working, in plain language, without shortcuts.